listeners, I am Manu Chaube from Life, and you are listening to The Leadership Demystified, a podcast for achievers. I am hosting this podcast with my wonderful co-host Pooja Talesra. Welcome, Pooja.
Hi Manu, good morning. I'm really excited to co-host this session today with you.
I am really excited to host our guest today because, like me, he is also an electrical and electronics engineer. But on the top of that, he has a huge experience as a human resource leader across industries. Our guest today is Chen Fong Tuan, who is the Chief People Officer of Marsing Group, one of the leading property developers in Malaysia. Apart from this, he has held several senior HR leadership positions at Maybank Group, British American Tobacco, OCBC, and Coca-Cola. He has a rich educational pedigree, a first-class honours degree in electrical and electronics, engineering from University of Sussex, MBA from Australia, and post-graduation from the likes of Harvard. He is also a CFA. Welcome, FT. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I am really excited to know your journey and how did you take that shift from being an engineer to a leader in HR?
Oh, okay. I came from a very small town in Malaysia. Grew up there, family of teachers. My mom was a teacher, my dad was a teacher, my sisters were teachers. So everybody was a teacher. So I decided, maybe I should try something else and not be a teacher. I was very fortunate that I managed to get a full scholarship to continue my studies overseas in the UK. So at that time, why engineering? Because it was an engineering company. To get a scholarship, obviously they're going to give you an engineering degree, and I didn't have any issues of taking any degrees at that time, so it was whatever that gets me a degree, that's fine. So engineering it is. That was 4 years of my life when I obtained my electrical and electronic engineering degree. Then I came back. Obviously, I need to work for the company that gave me the scholarship. It is the National Utility Company of Malaysia. So I worked for them for 7 years. I started as an engineer, but along the way, I stumbled upon, human resource is pretty interesting. That's why I call myself a human technologist. So that's how I went into HR, and then I moved on to different areas within HR, different companies. I left Tenaga after I completed all my 7 years. If you look at my LinkedIn, you would know that I went to Coca-Cola, I was with banks, and I was with British American Tobacco. So multiple industries.
That's a fascinating journey, FT. Thanks for giving us an insight into your journey. FT, I'm really curious to know from you that what kind of challenges you faced when you had to move from a profession such as engineering, which is essential and hard skill, to human resources, which requires a lot of soft skills to be in practice. So, what kind of challenges that you faced when you made a career shift from being an engineer towards being a human resource leader?
Well, a lot of people have this misnomer or misconception that there are soft and hard skills. I just call them skills. The difficulty in my challenge in moving from what I would say, a more concrete discipline to a more discipline that is a bit more existential in terms of understanding people, behavioral nuances, and so on. The challenge is not so much in moving from one discipline to the other. I think the difficulty is actually moving from one mindset to the other mindset. One mindset is what I call a static mindset, because obviously there are specific parameters that you need to adhere to a more growth mindset, because people grow anyway and potential grows anyway. So that is my greatest challenge, is because it's easier to have a static mindset. It's easier to have everything specified, parameters that is a bit more defined. To HR, which is totally undefined in most areas, in most respect, and potential is obviously you can't even measure potential well. Yeah, human potential is unlimited. That is probably my greatest challenge. But it has been a very interesting journey so far. I'm discovering new things every day, discovering new things about people every day. I meet interesting new individuals every day, and seeing them being successful from where they were to where they are going to be excites me.
That's a great perspective on hard and soft skills, right, Pooja?
Absolutely. So while FT was taking us through his journey. It was quite fascinating journey. The way he differentiated between hard and soft skill, a completely new perspective out here. So, FT, you have been through various organizations. You have had an experience of being in various organizations. So, do you think the leadership style does it really differ from organization to organization?
That has to be a yes. I think it is a matter of not a differentiation of leadership style, but it is a matter of the needs of the organization. Each organization, have different needs. Some are growing, some are consolidating, some are going international, some are going across borders. So every organization have different needs. Therefore, we need different kind of people, different kind of skill set, different kind of experience, and obviously different kind of style as well. Not every company can do what Zappos do. Holacracy. It sounds all very good that it's very flat. Everybody's boss. Nobody is the boss. Everybody is an employee. That sounds good, but it may not work in all organizations in all contexts. So I read with great interest that books after books of thought leaders coming out and say what Google is doing, and we should look at what Jeff Bezos is doing at Amazon. All those are great, but those way of working and style of management and leadership can only be suitable when it is contextualized to the need at that time, and also the maturity of the organization as well, the maturity of the people in the organization as well. So yeah, the short answer to that is yes, there is differences. Probably, Pooja, what you wanted to ask me was, is there a difference between uh, the different organizations that I've been to? Yes, that certainly there are big differences. My first organization is a government-linked company, so it is highly legacy is very very strong. People have been there for like many years. People don't leave simply because it's a monopoly business. Nobody else in the country actually sells electricity except my company at that time. So obviously, they don't have a choice. So the way it is managed then is very different because they don't have to worry about competition. They don't have to worry about incoming substitute products because you can't substitute electricity. So it's very different from an FMCG, for example, in British American Tobacco when we're selling cigarettes. It is highly regulated. It is highly compliant in many respects, and the people are there have to be always on their toes simply because competition is great, margin is very very thin. So leadership style is quite different. It has to take risks and always with going forward with two eyes behind our backs, looking at competition. So yeah, it's different not because people are different or leaders are different. It's simply because the situation necessitates different leadership style to be used.
Yeah, very profound answer. So it's contextual, and it would depend on the maturity of the organization, the people within it. But having said that, are there any traits which would be uniform, irrespective of any organization?
Okay, there is. I don't call them traits to be fair. How I look at talent and how I look at leaders, they have to have what I call four aspects of leadership. I call it the four A's. Yeah. The first A is aspiration. To be a leader, you need to have aspiration. There are so many good leaders with good traits and good competencies and good capabilities, but their aspiration is limited. They limit themselves to what they can achieve or what they can dream of. Aspiration is the number one A. The second A is what I call ambition. Now, most of my colleagues always ask me, but aspiration and ambition are the same thing, but written in two different ways. But not. Aspiration is I want to go to the moon. That's aspiration. Ambition is when can I be trained as an astronaut to build my own rocket? Now that is ambition. Ambition is how do you get to your aspiration? Aspiration is bigger. It's more existential. It's a being something. Ambition is to be. So both of them are important. The third one is what I call agility. Now, agility is your agility to manage pressure, your agility to manage learning, your agility to manage different situations, etc., etc. I just combine a multitude of traits into one trait called agility. And the fourth one is, I think, it is highly underestimated, underdeveloped. It's called alignment. So you can have the greatest ambition, the greatest aspiration. You are the most agile of leaders, but unfortunately, you are not aligned to the organization that you are serving in or you are actually working in. You're not aligned to the vision, not aligned to the mission. You're not aligned to the objectives strategically or operationally. Then you'll be highly ineffective as a leader within that context. So it is aspiration, ambition, agility, and alignment. When all four A's comes into what I call a balanced sweet spot, that's when the engagement of the leader will be high, the effectiveness of the leader will be high, the delivery and the result and outcomes of the leader will be high as well. So those will be, I wouldn't call them traits, but I would call them the four A's of what I would define as a effective leader, and that can be contextualized in any kind of situation if you put in the right kind of parameters in.
Wow. So beautiful and takeaway and a great insight. 4 A's, very important: aspiration, ambition, agility, and align. Eftin, I'm quite curious and would want to know your take on it. What do you think? Leadership is an innate quality or it is something which can be cultivated?
Okay. Interestingly, if I believe leadership is born, I wouldn't be doing my job, because then I wouldn't have to do anything, because everybody is just 1 or 0. Either you are born with it or you are not born with it. So obviously, I am not of that opinion. However, I do think that certain individuals or certain more fortunate individuals are more conditioned to be successful as a leader, simply because they have either the right environment to help them nurture when they are younger, or they have the right resources to help them nurture when they are younger, or they have the right coaching, the right amount of coaching, the right amount of mentoring, the right amount of people looking and helping them. So yeah. So in that sense, there are people because they are born with that kind of opportunity. Therefore, the probability of them succeeding as a leader will be higher. There are also the second category of natural gifts and talent. Either they are born with certain skills, certain talents that comes naturally to them, that requires them not to do that much, and yet they are quite good at it. But those are still a very, 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 very small minority, because most of the time those talents don't get into adolescence. They just get wasted because they don't have the discipline to continue to hone it. They don't have the resources to build it. So it's still a combination. I think leadership can be built, must be built, must be nurtured, can be cultivated with the right environment, with the right resources, with the right coaching.
Wow. So, FT, you said that yes, it can be something which can be cultivated depending on the right environment, the way is it nurtured. That's really a wonderful perspective out there, isn't it, Manu?
Absolutely, Pooja. And what about age, education, and experience, FT? Do these factors do they contribute in your ability to lead and inspire people?
Well, if I say that are agnostic, it would be not accurate. But if I say they have a huge correlation to ability to lead and inspire, that would be wrong as well. For example, Mr. Jobs, the late Mr. Jobs, is a dropout. Mr. Gates is a dropout as well. Jack Ma, for example, failed multiple times. He's one of the richest men in the world, very successful. Are they lacking in any way in terms of leadership and inspiration? I don't think so. But I also think that there is a specific floor where you need to hit minimum requirement, a threshold of education, so that you have opportunity to see things, to have a discussion intellectually, to have a discourse with people with the right kind of academic rigor, so that you are able to see the world in a different light. I have staff who have only passed their O levels, but they are very successful now. But I also seen PhDs and doctorates who fail miserably.
Absolutely, FT. I agree with you. And just from the organizational point of view, I'm just curious to know how does diversity inclusion helps inside an organization, and what kind of value does it offer when you have a diverse leadership team in your organization?
Okay. Organizationally, diversity inclusion obviously is not just a fad. It is, by research, by so many sources, that when you are diverse at the leadership level, it's the same as when you're diverse at the product level, that you are able to see different perspectives. Organizationally, I think there are probably three things that people are doing now, and organizations are also doing. They try to ensure that we have a policy in place that there's a certain percentage of not women, but diversity from a perspective of either race or ethnic background or discipline, not only gender. Because a lot of people think that diversity is all about gender. It is not about gender. It's about ideas. It's about where you come from. It's about perspectives. So that's the first thing that we should be looking at. Secondly, we should look at our values, core values of companies in terms of customer, etc., etc. But not that many organizations have core values in terms of diversity first, open-mindedness, for example. So far, I've not seen big organizations with those kind of core values, receptive to contrarian views. As a matter of fact, we encourage contrarian views. Now, those are also diversity. The diversity that we are defining nowadays, I think, is very, very narrow. It's always gender. If it's not gender, it's ethnic background. If it's not ethnic background, it's sexual orientation. But those are just a tip of the iceberg of diversity of perspectives, which is unlimited. We need to be able to encourage that, have an environment that actually reward in thinking, diversity in standpoints, diversity in vantage points. And the third one that I think that we are also lacking in terms of organizational trying to push diversity is something we call work-life balance. Now, I think we can increase productivity, we can accelerate productivity when everybody has a choice on how they want to manage their work and life, with the caveat that you maintain certain level of outcome and output. That is diversity on its own as well. In a nutshell, I think diversity and inclusion has to be seen from a higher level, a broader level, a more inclusive level, not just looking at gender, not looking at just sexual orientation or ethnic background, etc., etc.
Diversity of perspective. Wow, that's a really interesting point, FT, and I so agree with you. This is so insightful and so valuable for managers and budding managers if they are listening to it, who will be leading their organizations after some time. It's so important to have the diversity of perspective, and especially in your leadership team. That was a great conversation.
It was wonderful to have you, FT. Thank you for joining us in this session, being on our leadership demystified session on this leadership couch. Thank you so much, FT, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.